What kind of manager fires a kid without even asking what happened? That question burned in Victor Zavala's head as he pulled into the cracked parking lot of Store 8. The fast casual chain had 11 locations across 3 states. His dad built it from the ground up, and when Victor inherited the company 4 years ago, business was booming. But lately, something felt off. The numbers weren't alarming yet, but complaints had started trickling in. Nothing specific, just a general drop in morale, more turnover. Lower online ratings. Store 8, tucked behind a strip mall in a working-class neighborhood, had the highest turnover of all. Victor didn't want second-hand stories anymore. He needed truth. Real, unfiltered truth. So he grabbed the brown delivery polo, the one with the faded logo, and slipped it over a gray thermal shirt. A beanie covered his sharp haircut, and he let a few days of stubble grow in. He'd already arranged to train as a new delivery driver through a friend in HR who owed him a favor. No one at Store 8 had met him in person before. Most only knew the name Victor Zavala from payroll or memos, and the disguise, flawless. He looked like a guy who just walked in off a bus. He stepped inside just before noon. The place was dimmer than it should have been. A couple of customers waited at the front counter. No one greeted them. No music. Just the low hum of the soda machine. Behind the counter was a tall man with a shaved head and a clipboard. He barked something at the cook in the back, then turned and sized Victor up. "You the new driver?" the man asked. "Yeah, name's Vic," Victor said, keeping his voice low and casual. "I'm Darryl. I manage this place. Come on, clock in." Victor followed him into the back, passing a girl mopping the floor with earbuds in. She looked exhausted. Another kid, maybe 16 or 17, was awkwardly folding pizza boxes. "Hey," Victor said quietly to the kid while Darryl dug through a drawer. "First week," the kid gave a weak smile. "Second. Kinda hoping I make it through Friday." Victor was about to ask more, but Darryl shoved a tablet into his hands. "Watch these training videos, then you'll do a ride along with Marcus." The rest of the day moved fast. Victor watched the outdated videos, then shadowed Marcus, a wiry guy in his 30s who clearly knew the area. They hit 4 deliveries in under an hour. Marcus didn't say much, but he wasn't rude either, just tired. When they got back, Victor offered to sweep the back hallway. That's when he heard shouting. "I don't care, Jaden, you were late twice this week. I warned you, you're done." Victor paused just behind the walk-in cooler. "I missed the bus this morning, I told you," a teenager's voice said. It cracked slightly as he spoke. "I ran here. I was only like 7 minutes late. You think I care? You're not reliable. Get your stuff and go." Victor stepped out. "Hey, what's going on?" Darryl turned. "Nothing that concerns you." "It does if someone's getting fired," Victor said. "What's the kid's name?" "Jaden," the boy muttered, eyes on the floor. His apron was balled in his hands. Victor looked at him. He couldn't have been older than 16. His shoes were soaked. His cheeks were red from the cold. "How'd you get here?" Victor asked. "I ran," Jaden said, not meeting his eyes. "Bus left early. My mom's working doubles, no car. You run often?" Jaden nodded. "Sometimes it's not that far, just not easy." Victor turned to Darryl. "You didn't even ask why he was late." "I've got a business to run," Darryl snapped. "He's late more than once. He's out. That's how it works." Victor's hands clenched, but he kept his voice calm. "That's not how it should work," Darryl scoffed. "You new drivers think you know better." Victor leaned in slightly. "I'm not just a driver." "I don't care who. I'm Victor Zavala," he said, pulling off the beanie. "I own this place." Darryl's face went pale. Jaden blinked. "Wait, you're the owner?" Victor nodded. "And I just watched my manager fire a kid who ran here in the cold because his mom's working doubles. You didn't even ask why he was late. Just tossed him out like trash." No one spoke. The cook had stopped what he was doing. Even the girl with the mop had taken out her earbuds. "I'm not making any decisions yet," Victor said flatly. "But Jaden, you're staying, and Darryl, we're gonna talk in the office. Now." Victor shut the office door behind him and stood across from Darryl, who was now seated at the desk, his posture stiff. The fluorescent light buzzed above. casting a washed-out glare over the cluttered desk and a half-eaten sandwich sweating in its wrapper. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and disinfectant. Victor didn't sit. "Before you speak, I need you to understand something," Victor said, voice even. "I didn't come here to play games. I came here because I had real concerns about how this store was being run, and what I just witnessed confirms those concerns." Darryl folded his arms and leaned back slightly. "I stick to policy, that's all." "No, you don't," Victor said. "There's no policy that says we fire minors without a conversation. There's no policy that says we ignore context. You made a choice, not a policy call." Darryl looked toward the wall, jaw set. "If I bend for one, I have to bend for all. That's how things fall apart." Victor took a step closer. "No. That's how you end up with no one left to work here. I've reviewed the retention numbers. You had 6 people quit in the last 5 weeks. 2 were under 18. You want to tell me why? They weren't cut out for it," Darryl muttered. "Always whining. Always on their phones. No work ethic." Victor narrowed his eyes. "Do you see them as people or just problems?" A pause. "I see what works and what doesn't. I don't have time to babysit." "That's your job," Victor shot back. "You manage people, not just shifts, people. If you can't handle that, you shouldn't be in this chair." Darrell's mouth twitched, but he said nothing. "I'm not firing you right now," Victor continued, "but you're off the floor for the rest of the day. I'll be watching how this place runs without you." Darryl stood, eyes flashing. "You're making a mistake." "No," Victor said. "I'm giving you a chance to prove I haven't." He opened the door and Darryl walked out without another word. Victor followed and found the crew gathered near the prep station. They quickly returned to tasks, but the tension hung thick in the air. Victor turned to Marcus, who was wiping down the counter. "You've been here longest, right?" Marcus nodded once. 3 years. "I want you acting manager until I say otherwise. Just today, I need to see how this place runs without Darryl." Marcus blinked. "You sure?" Victor gave a short nod. "You've earned my trust." Marcus glanced around at the team, then back at Victor. "All right, I'll do what I can." Victor stepped outside and found Jaden sitting on the curb near the dumpster, hoodie pulled tight over his head, a plastic bag at his feet. "You didn't leave," Victor said, approaching slowly. Jaden stood quickly. I didn't know if I actually still had the job." "You do," Victor said, "and if anyone else tells you otherwise, send them to me." Jaden's shoulders loosened slightly. "Thanks." "I didn't mean to screw up." "You didn't," Victor said. "You showed up. That says more than you think." They walked back inside together. Victor handed Jaden a fresh apron from the supply shelf and nodded toward the back line. "Clock in. Find something to help with." Jaden gave a quiet "yes, sir," and disappeared into the kitchen. Victor stayed out of the way for the next hour. He watched how Marcus ran the floor, quiet, efficient, but with a calm presence that made people feel like they could breathe. He checked on the girl mopping earlier. Her name was Shay, and she was covering for a shift that someone else had dropped without notice. She didn't complain, just asked if she could take a 10-minute break soon to call her kids' school. Victor told her to take 15. He stepped out back to make a call. "Joanna," he said when his HR lead picked up, "I need employee records pulled for Store 8, attendance reports, complaint logs, exit interviews, everything from the last 6 months." "What's going on?" she asked. "I just watched a teenager almost get tossed out for showing up late after running across town. I want to know what else we've missed." "I'll get on it." When he returned, the store was busier. A small lunch rush had hit mostly construction workers and delivery drivers. The line moved faster than it had that morning. Orders were called out clearly. The energy was better, more focused. Marcus had stepped up without hesitation, assigning tasks fluidly, stepping in himself when someone fell behind. Victor grabbed a broom and helped near the front, pushing crumbs and dropped receipts into a pan. He didn't speak much, just listened. Near the soda machine, Shay was helping a new hire Denise figure out the register. Denise was nervous but quick to learn. Shay kept her calm with simple instructions, never raising her voice once. "You always train the new ones?" Victor asked when she passed by. Only if they last more than a day, she said with a tired laugh. Most don't. Why do you think that is? Shay hesitated. Honestly, it's not the job. It's the pressure, too much yelling, not enough help. Some folks just walk out mid-shift. She didn't say Daryl's name, but she didn't have to. Victor nodded. You've been here long? Almost a year. I work nights mostly, but they call me in when it's short. You want more hours, she shrugged. Depends who's managing. That was all Victor needed to hear. Around mid-afternoon, Marcus pulled Victor aside near the walk-in fridge. We're short on clean pans. Dishwasher didn't show again. You want me to run back to the warehouse or just wash what we've got? Victor thought for a moment. Wash what you can. I'll run to the warehouse. You sure? Victor gave a half smile. I think I can handle a supply run. The warehouse was 8 blocks away, a dusty unit behind a locked gate. Victor had the key. He'd helped lease the space 2 years earlier, back when expansion was the only thing on his mind. The inventory was in good shape, but the logs showed that requests from Store 8 had dropped significantly in the last few months. He loaded a crate of clean pans, sauce tubs, and gloves into the back of the store's delivery van and drove back. When he returned, the kitchen had fallen behind slightly. Orders were stacking. One of the fryers was acting up. Victor rolled up his sleeves and helped reline the prep bins while Marcus worked the phone, and the girl at the register handled customers with more confidence than before. The team didn't complain. They just moved faster. Later, as the dinner shift approached, Victor stepped into the office and pulled up the schedule screen. He checked who was working that evening, how many hours they'd been on, and who had called out recently. The pattern was clear. The same 3 or 4 people covered every hole. And the people who quit. Most had been scheduled without breaks, doubled up on weekend closings, or left alone to run the line after someone else walked mid-shift. He stood there for a long moment, then walked back out. Everyone, he said, raising his voice slightly. 10 minutes. Front lobby. The crew gathered. Some came from the back, others from the break room. Even Jaden stood near the soda fountain, still in his apron. I've been here all day, and I've seen more of how this store runs than I have in months of reports, Victor said. I saw people stepping up, helping each other, and making this place work without anyone yelling or tearing someone down. No one spoke, just quiet listening. I also saw why this store's been struggling. You've been covering for bad leadership. You've been doing more than your share. And I didn't know how bad it really was. He looked at Marcus. Effective immediately, Marcus is interim manager. He'll have hiring authority and schedule control with oversight from me. A few heads lifted. A couple of eyes widened. We're going to hire backup. Real backup. No more working doubles unless you volunteer. No one under 18 works past 8 without transportation arranged. And if someone's late, we ask why before we act. Victor paused. And if anyone treats another employee like they don't matter, they won't be here long. He let that sit. Questions? Jaden raised a hand slightly. What about uniforms? Mine's kind of falling apart. Victor nodded. New shirts and aprons arrive Monday. Everyone gets 2 sets. Another voice. What about the fryer? It's been down for weeks. I'll have maintenance out tomorrow. Victor looked at them all again. Anything else? Talk to Marcus or talk to me. No more silence. As the crew dispersed, Victor caught Marcus's eye. Think you're ready? Marcus gave a slow nod. I've been ready. Just needed someone to back me up. You've got it, Victor said. Now let's fix this place for good. The next morning, Victor was back at Store 8 before the sun had fully risen. The air was sharp and still, the kind of cold that seeped into your fingers no matter how tightly you clenched them. He stepped through the back door with a crate of fresh gloves and thermal liners under one arm. A quiet hum came from the kitchen. Marcus was already there. You open? Victor asked, setting the crate down. Marcus looked up from the prep table. Yeah, Shay got here 10 minutes ago. She's restocking the front. Victor nodded. Van's got the new containers and liners. I figured if we're asking people to deliver in this weather, we should at least give them the gear for it. Marcus wiped his hands on a towel. That'll help. You should have seen Jaden's face when I told him he was still on the schedule. Victor gave a short laugh through his nose. He here yet? Not yet, but he texted me at 6 to say he was catching the early bus. Victor leaned against the counter. How'd things go after I left yesterday? Smooth, mostly. Denise stayed a little past her shift to help close. No one asked her, she just did it. Said she didn't want to leave things messy for the morning crew. That's the kind of person we hang on to, Marcus nodded. I'll keep her close. Victor tapped his fingers on the counter. How's the fryer? Still acting up. The left side cuts off mid-cycle. I've got it shut down until maintenance gets here. Good call. No sense pushing it and risking someone's hand. A rustle near the front caught their attention. Shay appeared in the doorway with a clipboard and a pen tucked behind her ear. She had her sleeves rolled up and a faint line of flour on her forearm. Morning, she said. We're low on to-go lids. Like critically low, Victor pointed to the crate at his feet. Top box. I brought extra, she raised an eyebrow, impressed. Not bad for a guy who just learned the register layout yesterday. I learn fast, Victor said. Shay started unpacking the box, then paused. You know, I've worked here through 4 managers. Only 2 of them ever even said good morning. Victor crossed his arms. Which one stuck around longer? She gave a tired smile. The one who said it. The front bell chimed. Jaden stepped in, his cheeks flushed from the cold. He was wearing the same hoodie as the day before, but this time it was zipped up over a school uniform shirt. His shoes were still soaked. Bus was early, he said, catching his breath. Ran the last few blocks. Victor walked over. Come with me. Jaden followed him into the office. Victor pulled a pair of thick, insulated boots from a plastic bag under the desk and set them on the floor. Try those on. Jaden stared at them, confused. What? You're on your feet for 6 hours at a time. You shouldn't be doing it in shoes that leak. I can't. These probably cost more than my whole shift. They're already paid for. Try them. Jaden sat down slowly and unlaced his wet sneakers. Victor didn't say anything, just watched as the teenager slipped the boots on and stood up hesitantly. They fit, Jaden whispered, almost like he didn't want to believe it. Then they're yours, no strings. Jaden looked down at the floor. Thank you. Victor clapped him gently on the shoulder. Go clock in. We're opening in 15. By mid-morning, the store was in full swing. The repairs team arrived just after 10, a pair of techs with quiet focus and tool bags that clinked with every step. While they worked on the fryer, Victor moved between the register, prep station, and delivery logs. He wasn't there to supervise, he was there to understand. Denise was on shift, double-checking labels on the sauce tubs before loading them into the cooler. She worked methodically, tapping each lid as she went. Victor approached her while she reached for a clipboard. You always this organized? He asked. She shrugged without looking up. My last job was at a childcare center. If you don't label things right, someone gets sick. Why'd you leave? Funding cuts. They let half the staff go overnight. You ever think about training here, moving up? She paused, then turned to face him. I don't know. I've never worked anywhere that made me think I'd want to stay. Victor nodded once. Let's change that. She looked at him, as if trying to decide whether he meant it. Out front, the lunch crowd began to build a steady stream of regulars from the mechanic shop down the street, a few nurses still in scrubs, and a young couple with a toddler who kept reaching for the napkin dispenser. Victor noticed something else. The energy had shifted. People moved faster, but they weren't rushing. They communicated. They covered each other without being asked. There was no barking, no tension, but not everything was fixed. Just after noon, a man in a black hoodie and ball cap walked in, glanced around, and made a beeline for Marcus. He had a delivery tablet in one hand and a phone in the other. You Marcus? He asked, voice low. Yeah, I'm covering for Kyle. He said I should check in with you. Victor stepped closer. What's your name? Devin. First shift here. Yeah, Victor watched him for a moment. Something in the man's eyes didn't sit right. They darted too quickly between faces. His shoulders were hunched, not from cold but from something tighter. Marcus hesitated. You worked in food before? Couple spots, mostly delivery. Victor stepped in. Let me see your license and insurance. Devin pulled out a wallet and handed over a laminated card. Victor studied it. The name matched, but the address was from a different state. The expiration date was scratched, barely legible. You drive your own vehicle? Yeah. It's out back. Victor handed the license back. Hang tight, we'll set up your first run in 10. Devin nodded and walked toward the back exit. Victor leaned toward Marcus. Don't send him out yet. I'm checking with Kyle to make sure he actually sent this guy. You think he's lying? I think something's off. Victor stepped outside and called Kyle directly. The line rang twice. Kyle, Victor said. You send someone named Devin to cover your shift. A pause. No, I didn't call anyone. I told Darryl I couldn't make it. Victor's jaw tightened. Thanks. He hung up and walked back inside through the rear door. Devin was standing near the cooler, texting. You're done, Victor said plainly. Devin looked up. What? You lied. Kyle didn't send you. Leave now before I call the police. Devin's face hardened, but he didn't argue. He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the exit. Shay appeared behind Victor. What was that about? Someone trying to work under a fake referral. Would have had access to cash deliveries. She whistled low under her breath. Glad you caught it. Victor turned back toward the line. The store was still moving. No one had missed a beat. Even Jaden was chopping vegetables with quiet focus, his new boots planted squarely beneath him. Just before the dinner prep began, the repair techs emerged from the back. Fryer's done, one of them said. Replace the thermocouple and clean the lines. Shouldn't cut out anymore. Victor shook his hand. Appreciate it. The tech gave a small nod and left without fanfare. Victor looked out across the store. Things weren't perfect. They were understaffed. The team was still stretched. But the difference was real. People weren't being stepped on. They were being seen. He stepped into the office, pulled out a yellow notepad and wrote 3 names, Marcus, Shay, Denise. Below that, he wrote 2 more, Jaden and Kyle. Then, at the bottom, he wrote one last name, Darryl. He drew a line through it. Victor stood near the back door of Store 8, arms folded, watching a light trail of steam rise from the fryer now quietly humming after its repair. The kitchen had settled into a steady rhythm, with each person moving deliberately, focused but not frantic. He checked the time. 4:45. Darryl was supposed to arrive for a scheduled meeting, his final conversation before any decision was made. Victor had deliberately waited until the shift change, when the store would be slower but still operational. The timing mattered. He wanted the staff to see that accountability didn't happen in secrecy. At exactly 5, Darryl walked in through the front, not the back entrance like the rest of the managers. He wore a pressed shirt under a zip jacket and carried himself with the same stiff posture, his eyes scanning the room, clearly noting the changes. Victor met him in the main corridor between the cooler and the prep line. Office, Victor said simply. They entered the small, windowless room. Victor gestured for him to sit. He remained standing, resting a hand on the counter near the time clock. You took me off the schedule, Darryl said first. I've been here longer than anyone. I ran this store without missing a day for 2 years. You ran it into the ground, Victor replied calmly. You didn't miss a day, but you missed everything that mattered. Darryl leaned forward in the chair. Look, I'm not perfect, but I kept this place open. I dealt with no-shows, theft, broken equipment. I held it together. You didn't hold it together, Victor said. You held people down. That's not leadership. Darryl gave a short laugh. So now you think Marcus can do better. He doesn't have management experience. Shay's got an attitude problem, and that new kid, he can't even show up on time. Victor's voice tightened. You're not in a position to criticize anyone's work ethic. You fired someone without asking a single question. You dismissed people who needed support just because you didn't want to deal with them. I followed policy, Darryl said, raising his voice. We're not a charity. If they can't handle pressure, they shouldn't be here. Victor stepped forward, voice low but firm. You didn't follow policy. You used it as a shield to avoid accountability. You created a culture where people were afraid to speak up, where they didn't feel safe making mistakes. That ends now. Darryl's jaw worked silently for a moment, then he stood. So what, you're firing me? I am, Victor said. Effective immediately. You'll be paid out for any unused PTO. HR will contact you about the paperwork. Daryl didn't argue. He just stared at Victor for a long moment, then walked out without a word. Victor stood alone in the office for a moment, letting the silence settle. He then made his way out to the front, where the evening crew was clocking in. Shay was helping Denise count the drawer. Jaden had left an hour earlier, catching the last bus before dark. Victor walked over to Marcus, who was checking the prep logs. "It's done," Victor said. "He's out." Marcus nodded once. "You want me to tell the team or you doing it? I'll handle it." Victor walked to the front counter, resting both hands on the laminate ledge. A few team members looked up from their tasks. "Quick update," he said. "Daryl's no longer with the company. Going forward, Marcus is the store manager. Any questions or concerns, bring them to him or to me." There was no applause, no celebration, just a quiet moment of acknowledgement. No one looked surprised. Victor took a breath. "We're not fixing everything overnight, we're still short on coverage. But no one here carries more than their share without support. If you need help, you ask for it. If someone's struggling, we lift them, not shove them out the door." Denise raised her hands slightly. "Can I ask something?" He nodded. "Are we going to keep doing things the way we did today? Where people actually get breaks and help?" "That's the new normal," Victor said. "If it doesn't happen, I want to know." She nodded. "Good." Victor let the team disperse, then stepped outside. The wind had picked up. He walked past the dumpster to the edge of the lot, where a cracked sidewalk lined the street. A bus rolled by, kicking up a gust of dust and gravel. He stood there for a while, thinking this wasn't about one bad manager. It was about the blind spots that had crept in as the company grew. About the distance he had let form between himself and the people who kept the lights on. That night, he drove to HQ and stayed late. He reviewed shift logs from all locations, looking for patterns. He flagged 3 other stores with high turnover and identical scheduling issues. He messaged Joanna in HR, asking her to prepare staff feedback surveys for every location, anonymous and mandatory. The next morning, he was at Store 8 before opening. Not to work a shift, just to observe. Shay was there early again, this time training a new hire named Lewis. She had him walking through cleaning protocols, not just telling him. Victor waited until they paused for a moment. "You comfortable training?" he asked her. Shay tilted her head. "Comfortable enough. I'd like to create a team lead position, something between crew and manager. You'd get a raise, guaranteed hours, and some say in how new hires are onboarded." She crossed her arms. "What's the catch? You'd be expected to mentor, not just train. That means if someone's slipping, you don't write them off, you figure out why." Shay glanced at Lewis, who was carefully refilling the sanitizer bucket. "I'll do it," she said, "but I want to help choose who gets hired on weekends. That's when we lose people. Deal?" Victor turned to leave, but she added, "And I don't want it just because I've been here longest." "You're getting it because you make people better," he said. "That's what leaders do." Later that day, he met with Marcus in the office. The door was open, the sounds of lunch prep echoing faintly in the background. "I've got a hiring list here," Marcus said, tapping a folder. 3 candidates. 2 are former employees who want to come back now that they heard Daryl's out. You trust them. One of them quit because she was told she couldn't take time off for her mom's surgery. The other just couldn't handle the pressure alone. "I think they both deserve another shot." "Bring them in," Victor said. "You run the interviews, but loop me in if anything feels off." Marcus hesitated. "You sticking around long?" Victor gave a half shrug. "Not every day, but I'll be here more, not just this store, all of them." "I lost touch." Marcus closed the folder. "Then maybe we've got a real shot at fixing this." That evening, Victor stood near the register during the dinner rush. The line moved steadily. Orders were accurate. New faces were learning quickly. When the last customer of the hour stepped out, Denise leaned on the counter and exhaled. "Feels different," she said. "It is different," Victor replied. She looked over at Marcus, who was restocking cups, and then at Shay, who was handling line checks with Lewis by her side. "You gonna do this at the other stores too?" "I have to," Victor said. Otherwise, this was just a one-time fix. She nodded. Good. Some of us don't get second chances often. Victor looked out across the floor at the people who showed up despite being overlooked, at the ones who stayed when it made no sense to, and at those who just needed one person to ask why before passing judgment. He knew now real leadership didn't sit in an office. It stood beside the mop bucket. It rode in the delivery van. It asked questions before making decisions, and it never stopped listening.